This is a Hot Pie Original.
Okay, taxpayers and voters, we've reached a low point. That's shocking to say, even by the ridiculous low political standards of the day. The speeches, and they matter, and they should matter, but the speeches and all of the speeches around them and all the spin surrounding the political speeches of today are incredibly dangerous. Don't really want to say that. It may feel a little extreme, but we're in extreme times. If we want to say, and we should, that words matter, what would you call the actions of those that scaled the side of the Capitol building, breaking down any and all barriers, doors, windows, trashing everything in their way, armed with zip ties and handcuffs, some with guns, bombs were even found in cars. So what exactly would you call that? And it's not ridiculous to even ask the question, because remember, over time, when we've discussed terrorism, we've battled back and forth exactly what the definition would be. So it's fair to say, what exactly would you call the people that would do that? All of them, by the way, wearing Trump gear of some kind, beating up any and all law enforcement officials that dare try to stop them, looking for Mike Pence and members of Congress to kidnap or kill. Is terrorist not the right word? I'm not sure that it matters, but we need a term. If not, you can then offer up what term should be used. So a protester, can we agree on this as we start to argue the difference between the two? And it does matter. A protester, and I think we should have more protests. Actually, I don't think we protest enough. I don't think we protest enough of the stuff that matters, wars and taxes and things like that. But a protester walks around the Capitol grounds with a sign or yells, whatever. A terrorist breaks in and tries to kill people. Yes or no? Why is this coming up now? I'm over it, Jeff. Let's move on. Well, too bad. It's coming up now because there is a debate on what and how to put together a commission to study the January 6 attacks, just like the commission that studied the 9/11 attacks. Is it necessary? You could debate that, and it's being debated, which of course has taken a horrific and ugly turn. So you yourself could debate whether or not it's even necessary. You could say it's all politics. And again, it might mostly be politics, which is my point exactly. Is it necessary to come up with a term? Is it necessary to identify what it is that caused this rage? Yeah, probably. You could argue that the commission is necessary if it's really going to turn into this. The commission is necessary to study how to better prepare ourselves for these domestic terrorist attacks. Okay, fair enough. But it's coming up, and I bring it up, and I'm throwing it in your face because the people elected to represent you, the lawmakers of this country, are talking about it. For those that don't know, I call them political heroes because I think we have a dangerous and pathetic obsession with hero worshiping and sucking up to people in office. So when you hear me call them political heroes, that's where it comes from. I'm a little skeptical and cynical about what they do and how they represent us. So that's the term I used. They're campaigning on what happened on January 6th. Here's something that needs to sink in to each and every person in this country. It is now politically advantageous to defend the terrorists. No decent person could defend the people on that day. There's no way. That's a pretty easy line to draw, is it not? So not only are we reaching the point of defending the people on January 6th, it is political brownie points. You are going to get reelected in some places in this country, and certainly in the state of Texas, on defending the people on January 6th. So here we go. And I don't think I'm exaggerating this at all. People are gaining political traction, generating support by passionately defending the terrorists. That's really what it is. You are passionately defending a terrorist. Really, this is about, as we know, as most people should know, and if you're offended by it, too bad. This is really about a marginalized sector of this country that believes their white culture is under attack. That is exactly what has been going on in politics now of the past 5 or 6 years. White culture feels under attack. It's never, ever about policy. It's never, ever about taxes. It's not about war. It's about that. It's real. And you know how we know that? Somebody actually took the time to study it. Hey, I'm here with John McClellan, the creator and founder of ATX Hot Sauce. And when I say that you started this, maybe not screwing around in your kitchen, but maybe not that far removed from screwing around in your kitchen. So talk about the creation, the process, the dream that came out of the pandemic.
It's from Austin, from Texas. There's not a lot of hot sauces out there that are actually from here. There's a few great ones too. But, Frank's and Tabasco and some of these other ones, I want something that's Texan like me. It's different. And I think that's what Texas is a little bit about. That's what Austin's about. So that flavor first, without the vinegar, and then going into the heat after that, but not a blow your head off heat. If you notice, a lot of the hot sauces out there that you see are like Da Bomb or Death's Door, right?
Yeah.
And they're just supposed to blow your head off when you do it, when you taste it. Well, that's not the kind of hot sauce that I'm making. I'm making a hot sauce for the everyday person, for the condiment for every single day. And that's why the flavor first, heat second is so important, that you get those flavors that nuances whatever food that you're making.
All right, order a box now. It's atxhotsauce.com, atxhotsauce.com. Not to bore you, but a researcher who studies international terrorists studied the motivations behind the January 6th attacks. Now, I submit to you, it is the motivation behind almost all voting right now. It is a 35% of the vote kind of thing. So here's what, from Yahoo News, what the researcher found. I don't think too many people are going to be that surprised. And there's a point to me bringing all this up. There's a highlight to all of this. Political scientist Robert Pape began studying the issues that motivated people arrested in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Blah, 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 right? No, don't say blah, blah, blah. If Pape's conclusions are correct, he suggests that the Capitol attack has historical echoes reaching back to before the Civil War, he said in an interview over the weekend. The study would appear to connect January 6th not only to the once fringe right-wing theory called the Great Replacement. I've never heard that before, but apparently we're living in a time which 35% of the population believes in something called the Great Replacement. This holds that minorities and immigrants are seeking to take over the country, but also to events such as the 2017 far-right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where crowds of white men marched with torches chanting, "Jews will not replace us." He says over the weekend, if you look back in history, there's always been a series of far-right extremist movements responding to new waves of immigration to the United States or to movements for civil rights by minority groups. You see a common pattern in the Capitol insurrectionists. Whites who are worried that, as social changes occur around them, they will see a decline in their status in the future. Counties with the most significant declines in the non-Hispanic white population are the most likely to produce insurrectionists. Bottom line is the guy actually went back and studied what the heck's going on with you. And the common theme is exactly the common theme, and that is, I'm worried that my whiteness is not going to matter, and I'm really upset about it. 10% of those members on January 6th are members of established far-right organizations such as the Oath Keepers militia or the Proud Boys, a nationalist extremist group. Pape has argued the remaining 90% of the, quote, ordinary rioters, what a term. What are you? I'm an ordinary rioter. The remaining 90% of the ordinary rioters are part of a mass movement that has shown itself willing to put violence at its core. Other mass movements have emerged, he said, in response to large-scale cultural changes in this country's history. Blah, 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 blah. So it wasn't about being a member of a group. It was about feeling like my white culture is under siege. All right, so you don't care about that stuff. So the point of the speeches, the real point of what is disgusting, it is not new that we have nutcase extremists. That's not new, never been new, never going to go completely away. I do think what is mostly new and most disturbing is campaigning on defending them. Winning votes, winning hometown votes, defending the people that are terrorists. Let it sink in, because that is precisely what is happening. You're going to get reelected in many of these places. Oh, and you're going to hear from them in many of these places because you defended what happened on January 6th. So put it in perspective. I mean, imagine this. If someone wearing an Arabic scarf and not a MAGA hat, imagine this. Imagine if somebody scaling the side of the Capitol had an Arabic scarf on and not a MAGA hat, and they're chanting, "Kill Mike Pence." Do you think that guy would get another breath before a bullet hits him in the forehead? Do you think an East Texas member of Congress would defend him if he was wearing an Arabic scarf and not a MAGA hat, scaling the side of the Capitol, chanting "Kill Pence"? Really? If this happens in Afghanistan, Louis Gohmert calls them extremists. If they're extremists from the South, he calls them protesters and freedom fighters. For those that don't know, and those in this state, you can appreciate this, but let me give you some perspective on East Texas because it matters here. My grandfather drove a trash truck in Northeast Texas. And most people in the state of Texas know this, and everybody should follow along. And I don't know, no, you're not going to disagree with me. My theory is that for every 20 miles you go east of Dallas, you go back in time 10 to 15 years. Right? So if you just keep going all the way to Mississippi, you'll be in 1920 sooner or later. By the time you get to Nacogdoches, you're in 1955. True? Yeah. Okay, so I listened to this speech. Go back to everything I just set up. This is not about being shocked that 30 to 35% of this country is angry racist. That's not all that surprising. Listen to this speech, and I dare you to disagree with what I've said.
The Justice Department announced the arrest of an active duty United States Marine stationed at Quantico for his involvement in the protests that day. Joe Biden's Justice Department is criminalizing political protests, but only political protests by Republicans or conservatives. They're destroying the lives of American families. They're weaponizing the events of January 6th to silence Trump-supporting Americans. You don't have to take our word for it. Michael Sherwin, the acting U.S. attorney who handled the first few months of the Capitol breach probe, bragged that his office arrested at least 100 people between January 6th and January 20th to stop people from coming to D.C. to protest Joe Biden's inauguration.
All right, the genius isn't finished there. Would you call him a bumpkin? Yeah, you probably could or should. No, he wasn't done there. He wasn't finished because you know what he's doing, and some others have done this. I mean, he's not the first guy over the past few days to realize, understand, this is a cynical view, people in Congress, they only exist, their day-to-day existence, they wake up with only one thought in mind. I need to get reelected. I need to get reelected. They'll do anything, virtually anything to get reelected. So it doesn't matter what the deep belief is. All that matters is getting reelected. So you know how you get reelected in many places in this country? You get reelected, obviously, we now know, because these speeches are, every word that comes out of a politician's mouth is to get reelected. So how are you going to get reelected if you're in East Texas or you're in Georgia or many other places around the country? You're going to get reelected by defending the people that attacked the Capitol, by defending the terrorists. That's how you're going to get reelected. That's more important than talking about taxes. It's more important than talking about wars. That's the most important thing you can do to get reelected. That's what should sink in for everybody. I mean, think about In the past few days, you've had somebody compare what happened on January 6th to, what do you call them, tourists? You had another knucklehead say that, these are members of Congress, say that it really wasn't Trump supporters. It was, they were plants. Right. Yeah. Yes. People wanted to go there to get arrested to trick everyone else. So you've got guys like Louis Gohmert who now are going to campaign and sell the idea back home. I will defend them on January 6th. Here's something that should make you uncomfortable. Imagine the time we're living in now. Imagine the low bar in politics today. Imagine the sales pitch being made by members of Congress. Imagine that this is how to get reelected. This is how to get people to show up and pump their fists and say, you got my vote. First of all, East Texas is not a great place. Things aren't going so well. There's a meth lab around every corner. But this is how he's going to get reelected. So think of the environment of today. And I realize you may not want to think about this, but imagine the white rage that happens when, not if, but when one candidate is a black woman from the Bay Area that went to Berkeley. You think the nut jobs are angry now? Imagine when it's Kamala Harris on the ballot.
Nearly all have no criminal record. Some are veterans and ex-law enforcement officers, but the Justice Department is throwing the book at them. Even worse, federal judges and prosecutors argue that these folks are a danger to society because they doubted the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. In one case, against a man who didn't even enter the building, a federal judge nonetheless denied bond and said this, quote, "This is an offense that at the bottom was an attempt to stop democracy from moving forward because people were unhappy about the results of the election. I don't think the defendant will follow my conditions if he believes I am part of this machine of the democratic process." Well, that judge ought to be part of the Democratic Justice Department because that's how that judge is acting. Not as a judge, but as an advocate, as a part and parcel of this. You could call it a conspiracy because these people are working to silence anybody that supported Donald Trump.